Oh. Welcome to Meaningful Mornings. Some years ago in Pittsburgh, there was a shooting, a massacre at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Do you all remember that? Shortly after, the Sri Venkateshwara Temple had organized a gathering of community members and leaders to come together and feel united. And they asked different speakers to share their thoughts. And I was invited last to offer a summary of the whole gathering. As I'm being introduced, the speakers, the MCs share, we now welcome Acharya Vivek, and truly, he lives up to Vivek, which means discrimination. They're sharing this to 300 people who are supposed to be gathered for uniting. So as I'm walking across the stage, I'm looking down. That way I don't make any eye contact with anyone. And when I finally reached the mic, I shared what the MCs meant to share is that Viveka, or Vivek, means prioritization. Then everyone relaxed. One who lives by Viveka, a fundamental quality needed for Vedanta, they understand and appreciate what is the means and what is the ends. The means is meaningful. This is why our workshop is called Meaningful Mornings. The ends is to be independently joyous. We're approaching 400 mornings together. The vision of our workshop is for you not to know more about Jivan Sutrani or the intention path, but rather for you to be independently joyous. In verses 42 to 44, I told you, constant review. You have to be ready for this. And it's not because I lack content. Now what am I going to teach today? I have too much to teach. This is for our own internalization. Shri Krishna shares what the role of the karma kanda is. And the implication is engage in karma yoga. Right actions with the right attitude will prepare the mind to follow the intellect. With quietude, insights become more transformative. If one forgets, that's called avidya or ignorance. If one forgets the role of the karma kanda, if one forgets to engage in karma yoga, all one will be doing is being busy. Those who are busy do not have the bandwidth to inquire. They don't reach the jnana kanda. They don't feel jnana yoga. In verse 45, Sri Krishna shares the same message, but uses a different framework. The framework is of gunas. Tells Prince Arjuna, the karma kanda is to lead to the jnana kanda. So, nitya sattva staha. Be engaged perpetually in sattva. so that this is not just a term for you. Sattva in practice is nobility. Nobility in practice is inclusivity. And I'm checking in with all of you. You can hear me and see me clearly. I see a lot of stoic faces right now. It's because we're contemplating, Vivekji. Nobility, inclusivity. In verse 46, Shri Krishna deepens this message by sharing, one has to go beyond sattva also. One has to go beyond yoga also. The word for going beyond yoga is yukta. One who is united. One who is feeling oneness. Yoga is a means. The Veda is a means. The gunas are a means. There's a lower means, karma kanda, a higher means, jnana kanda. A lower means, rajas, a higher means, sattva. And coming back to the practice of inclusivity, the fulfillment of inclusivity is infinity. When you can't include anymore, that's because there is oneness or infinity. We have now reached verse 47. All of chapter 1 was 47 verses. Now we've gone through 46 in chapter 2, and verse 47, you already know. When we studied this verse, Swami Tejomayananda shared, this is not a shloka, this is a sutra. A sutra is like a zip file. There's that much content and that much we have to reflect upon for these two lines to come to life. Let's chant together. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahetur bhuhu ma te sangostva karmani. By show of hands, how many of you have never heard this verse before? Wow, there's actually a hand up. Where have you been living your whole life? But really, the real question is, how many of you know what this verse means? How many of you are living this verse? The first quarter. Karmani, which is really action. Eva, alone. Adhikaraha, your right or eligibility. Te, you. Your right is only to action. That's the first quarter. Opening this up. Typically, when we think of karma, we have a ritualistic sense that comes with this. And when you think of a ritualistic sense, this tends to happen in a controlled environment. At a mandir, in your own puja room. Shri Krishna, a visionary, is taking karma from a controlled environment and spreading this to an uncontrolled environment. That this worshipful attitude you have at a mandir, in your own home, to have this attitude in all that you do. Specifically, and this is a new term that I am introducing in our study, the karma that's referred to here is kartavya. Kartavya karma, which means your specified duties. Maybe a simpler way to understand this is your regular responsibilities. We're all thinking, this is a redundant message. I don't think it is. And I will offer more insight so that we abide, we are committed to our regular responsibilities. A kartavya karma is always for someone else's benefit. If you are acting for your benefit, it is not a kartavya karma. It is for another's benefit, for their welfare. Relatedly, in Sanatana Dharma, in Hinduism, there is no significant emphasis on volunteering. Why? Because it is your regular responsibility to serve. One doesn't have to go out of their way to say, you should do this. This is built into all that we do. With our kartavya karma, though we're acting for another's benefit, we benefit more. Our benefit, though, is not material, it is immaterial. Someone else may have a job opportunity because I help them, but the benefit that I extract is my mind becomes purer. All of this happens when we engage in our regular responsibilities. Right actions, right attitudes. The next quarter, ma. Ma means no, not. Paleshu, that is fruits or results, kadachana, ever. One has no right to the results or to the fruits ever. That's the second part of this sutra. Whenever we act and our mind drifts to the results, that is no longer kartavya karma. What that becomes is kamya karma, which means a selfish action. Is no longer a regular responsibility. It has devolved to a selfish action. One will not evolve then. One will only be busy. One has confused the means and the ends. Logically, why we have no right, why we should not focus on results, because they're not in our control. Think of all that has happened in your life. Did you control everything that has happened in your life? Barely. We barely control what happens to our own body. Last night, after I'd finished a long session of teaching and I sort of missed dinner and I was lying down and Sheila and I were reading together, and my digestive system was making a lot of noises because it was empty. And she said, "Why are you making so much noise?" I barely control my own intestines. So it's not in our control, so let it go. Another logical aspect of why we shouldn't be results-oriented, it's not in the present. This always comes in the future tense. So those who live for results are only postponing their joy. That is a dangerous way to live. And one more perspective on why we have no right to the results. If you were in charge of the results, if we were, we would all be dead by now. We don't even know what is healthy and good for us. We should be grateful that there's someone who does know what is healthy and beneficial for us. Like if I asked Vyasa, what do you want for breakfast? Cereal. Vyasa, what do you want for lunch? Cereal. Vyasa, what do you want for dinner? cereal with sprinkles. He should be thankful that I'm sort of in control of his diet right now. And I'll just introduce a thought for the last 2 quarters. We'll elaborate tomorrow. Ma, that's no again. Karma phala hetur bhuhu. One should not act for results. And I remember Swami Tejomayananda sharing, even if you tell someone to move, they'll say, why? Correct? We always want a motive for why we should act. Ma, there's another no. Te sangaha astu akarmani. And one should never be engaged in inaction, which is laziness or tamas. And what Guruji shared here, it's such a activist insight. The greatest enemy to the people, as into society, is inaction. Those who are complacent, those who allow inequality. From inspiration to application. On Friday, your application was to research Juneteenth. And I knew you wouldn't do this. So on Saturday, in our Freedom Walk, I read to you what Juneteenth is. And a highlight of this, even though the Emancipation Proclamation was established much earlier, the actual implementation of the end of slavery came much later. And for us, how this relates to us is we have a lot of philosophy in our life, but see how much time it takes to practice it. So invest more in practice. Yesterday, your application was to organize your notes for this constant review. Your notes will become your mantras to reflect upon. The notes I have from the Vedanta course, I cherish. I would be okay if someone stole my laptop, but I would be devastated if someone stole my notes. Your application for today, I want you to reflect on how you're planning to become happy. And I don't mean this in a positive. That next year, when my grandchildren are married, then I'll be able to practice yoga. I want you to reflect on how you're doing that. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Be safe, be sound, be serene, be happiness.